On a beautiful day, Barnes and Paxton sat in the park to enjoy a peaceful moment. Their conversation revolved around their faith in God and the number of people they had persuaded to join their religion. Later, they walked through the streets to share the good news and practice their faith. However, the people around them did not seem very interested. As they climbed the stairs, one could say they were also unintentionally exercising in the process. While passing by a group of female students from a sorority, they were invited to take a photo together. However, the students suddenly pulled up Paxton's skirt, claiming they wanted to check whether Mormons wore magic underwear. Feeling offended and considering it a form of persecution against Christians, Barnes and Paxton left in disappointment. They continued to visit an elderly man named Reed. When they reached the gate, Barnes locked his bicycle with a large lock, as a serious and cautious gesture. Then, they knocked on Reed's door, hoping he would open quickly because a storm was approaching. Another missionary, Han, had asked them to visit Reed, as he had previously expressed interest in their faith. When Reed opened the door, he invited them inside for shelter, but they declined, explaining that they could not enter a man's house if no one else was present. Immediately, Reed lied, saying his wife was home. Feeling spiritually reassured, Barnes and Paxton stepped inside, and he helped them hang up their wet coats. Inside the house, they admired the decorations, particularly noticing a butterfly on the window. After a while, Reed sat down and explained that his wife was too shy to meet them but was preparing a blueberry pie. As they discussed faith, Reed shared that he had once tried to search for a true religion. He then showed them a Book of Mormon, leading them to believe he was a follower. The conversation gradually shifted to family. Paxton mentioned that she had many sisters, while Barnes shared that her mother had converted after her father passed away. This led them to attend various churches in search of the right faith. Upon hearing this, Reed asked Barnes if she had ever contacted her father from the afterlife, but she denied it. To lighten the somber atmosphere, Paxton cheerfully declared that she wished to become a butterfly after death so she could land on the hands of her loved ones. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered, but the candles remained lit. Reed apologized, saying it happened often and joking that he had to wear glasses to see things clearly. However, the conversation took a turn when he began asking questions that challenged their faith, such as, why do you believe the Bible is true when God delivers his revelations through sinful humans? He continued sharing that he had studied theology and had found his own true religion. At this moment, Barnes and Paxton began to feel uneasy, so they asked Reed to call his wife out to meet them before they left. As Reed went inside, Barnes' attention was drawn to a candle on the table, and she realized it had the scent of blueberry pie, something that made her suspicious. Shortly after, Reed returned and said his wife was ready to meet them, inviting them to follow him. However, Barnes grew wary and made an excuse to make a phone call before proceeding. When Reed went back inside, they attempted to leave, but Barnes suddenly realized that their bicycle key was still in the coat that Reed had taken. This meant they would have to walk a long distance if they wanted to escape. Nevertheless, they tried to open the door, but it was locked. Their fear escalated when Paxton attempted to call Han and Kennedy, members of their church, but was unable to connect the call. Barnes assumed the storm outside was interfering with the signal. She peered through a small window, wondering if they could escape through it. But when every escape route failed, they decided to find Reed and demand that he unlock the door. Venturing deeper into the house, they eventually found him standing in a room with two suspicious doors. They retrieved their coats and firmly insisted that he open the door, claiming that Han had called them back to the church. However, Barnes could not find the bicycle key in her coat, and strangely, Paxton found it in her own pocket. Reed told them that the door lock was on a timer and would not open until morning, but he offered them another way out through the back door. He also confronted them about lying, explaining that he had metal embedded in the walls and ceiling to block phone signals. Barnes felt increasingly uneasy and asked which door led outside, but Reed simply told them to choose for themselves. As their fear became more real, they demanded that he bring his wife out to guide them out, but instead of doing so, he made a chilling statement, asking whether they still believed his wife was alive simply because he had said so. He then related this to their belief in God, suggesting that they believed in God only because someone told them he was real. Hearing these provocative words, Barnes stepped toward the first door and opened it, but her expression terrified Paxton. Then, she moved to the second door and opened it, sending chills down their spines as they realized it led to a basement. Meanwhile, in the middle of the storm, Kennedy realized that Barnes and Paxton had not returned from their missionary task. Back at Reed's house, Barnes and Paxton entered survival mode, asserting that both the church and the police knew their location. Upon hearing this, Reed reassured them that there was nothing serious and offered to help them. He turned on eerie music and set up various board games on the table. As the two women observed, they began sweating and trembling. Reed then arranged scriptures from different religions on the table, explaining that, like board games, all holy books originated from the same source. Terrified, They contemplated escaping as Reed declared that none of the scriptures were truly original. He called them salespeople for religious ideas and said he wanted to sell them a different one. At that moment, he turned off the lights and projected images of deities who had died and been resurrected. He told them that Star Wars portrayed a similar idea of gods manipulating followers into believing a character was divine. He concluded by saying that religion could either be a lie or the truth, then asked them to choose a door based on their beliefs. Reed then wrote "believe on one door and do not believe on the other," demanding they make a decision. In a moment of frustration, he threw the board games and scriptures onto the floor, insisting that religions were neither sacred nor real. Paxton quickly moved toward the "do not believe" door, thinking that if she pleased Reed, he might let them go. Barnes, on the other hand, discreetly grabbed a letter opener from the scattered objects and approached the "believe" door, rejecting his argument and asking Paxton if she still had faith in God. Seconds later, the two women decided to go through the "believe" door, and Reed shut it behind them. They cautiously descended the stairs into the basement, realizing there was no way out. As Paxton tried to comfort herself with the thought that the church would look for them, Barnes spotted a window and attempted to open it. When a wooden plank fell off, they discovered that the window had a locked iron grate behind it. At that moment, they heard a door opening, and Barnes handed Paxton the letter opener, instructing her to attack Reed if given the chance. But instead of Reed, a frail-looking elderly woman with a veil appeared, placing a decayed blueberry pie on the table and behaving strangely. Then, they heard loud music playing from a speaker tube and called out for Reed. Barnes tried to open the door, but it was locked from the other side. Moments later, the music stopped, and Reed spoke to them through the speaker tube, claiming that the woman was a prophet of God. As the woman sat down in a chair, Reed explained that he had found the true religion and wanted them to be witnesses as he documented his experiments. He stated that the prophet would eat the poisoned pie and resurrect. Shortly after, the prophet ate the pie and collapsed. Reed then asked Barnes and Paxton to confirm her death by checking for vital signs, which they did, confirming that she had stopped breathing. At that moment, a loud bell rang throughout the house, making Barnes and Paxton suspect that someone from the church had come looking for them. They peered through a small gap under the basement door and began screaming for help. However, Reed shut the room door and went to speak with a visitor. It turned out to be Kennedy, who asked if Reed had seen the two missionaries, but he denied it. Kennedy left due to the storm, never hearing Barnes and Paxton's screams. Realizing they needed to signal Kennedy, they pulled the rug away from the gap beneath the door and found a few matches, attempting to start a fire to alert him. At this moment, Barnes noticed that the prophet's body had changed positions, but Paxton dismissed her suspicion. They continued trying to light the fire but failed, and Paxton suddenly felt a presence behind them. When they turned around, the supposedly dead prophet was standing behind them. She vomited and then began muttering strange words about heaven. The prophet also spoke of something that wasn't real, but before she could continue, Reed entered the basement and took her away. As the prophet left, Reed asked Barnes and Paxton to describe what she had seen, and Paxton repeated her words. Upon hearing this, Reed declared that the prophet had seen God and claimed that Barnes and Paxton could also see him if they were willing to die and be resurrected. However, Barnes boldly challenged him, stating that it was nothing more than a trick, not a miracle. She argued that the prophet's vision was identical to past cases on Earth where people hallucinated due to a certain illness. But Reed refused to accept her reasoning. As the debate escalated, Barnes signaled to Paxton that she should attack Reed when she heard their agreed-upon keyword. However, before Paxton could grab the letter opener, Reed suddenly slashed Barnes' neck. As it happened, Paxton rushed to the basement door, banging and screaming for help, but the roaring storm outside drowned out her cries. As Barnes gradually weakened, Reed called out to Paxton, assuring her that Barnes would resurrect. Seconds passed, but Barnes slowly faded away. Seeing this, Reed became confused and told Paxton that something was wrong. He checked Barnes' hand and removed an implanted device, claiming that she was merely a computer program. He showed it to Paxton, saying that this was why she could not come back to life. They then sat at the table, and Reed tried to explain a theory to Paxton. He told her that if she also died, she would resurrect. Reed went on to claim that they were living in a simulation, not reality. However, Paxton refused to believe him and stated that the implant was merely a contraceptive device, not a microchip. She also asserted that Reed's resurrection experiment had failed. To prove her claim, she explained that while Kennedy's arrival had distracted them, another woman had entered the basement and replaced the original prophet, the one Reed had hoped would resurrect but had ultimately failed. The second woman had played the role of the resurrected prophet, reading lines about the afterlife from a script. However, she had gone off script and attempted to warn them by saying, "It's not real." Paxton attempted to verify her theory. She saw water dripping from the ceiling and checked under the table, discovering a hidden cellar. But Reed told her that her theory would only be proven correct if she found a body in the cellar, proving that the prophet had not actually resurrected. Reed confidently stated that she would find true religion if she stepped into the cellar. Paxton entered the cellar and found the corpse of the first prophet. Enraged, Reed locked the door behind her, trapping her inside. Determined to escape, Paxton searched the room and, fortunately, found a door. When she opened it, it led to a chamber filled with ritualistic objects and another door. She opened the second door and found more occult artifacts, along with a third door. However, the third door was locked with a padlock identical to the one she had used for her bicycle outside. She took out her key and tried it, and to her shock, it worked. She stepped into another room, where several malnourished women were imprisoned in iron cages. Overcome with compassion, she attempted to unlock the cages but failed. Suddenly, Reed appeared in the room and asked her if she had discovered the true religion. Paxton responded affirmatively. She told him that when they had arrived as missionaries, Reed had taken the key from their coat and hidden their bicycles so no one would find them. He then gave the key to one of the prophets, instructing her to lock the final door with a bicycle lock. Later, he switched the keys, returning one to Paxton's pocket instead of Barnes. She added that he had manipulated everything to place her exactly where he wanted her, predicting her every move. Paxton concluded that Reed had controlled everything and that true religion was, in fact, control. The moment she said this, Reed agreed and began a speech about control while Paxton silently devised a plan to escape. As he stepped closer, she stabbed him in the neck with a letter opener and ran, desperately searching for an exit. However, she found herself back in the same old basement. There, Reed caught up to her and stabbed her in the stomach, satisfied that he had proven his theory. As both of them grew weaker, Reed moved closer to Paxton, instructing her to pray. When she closed her eyes to pray, he leaned against her. But Barnes, who had not fully passed away, stood up and struck Reed down with a wooden plank. She then collapsed, taking her final breath in Paxton's arms. With Reed and Barnes both dead, Paxton found a way out. Fortunately, she discovered a window without bars and managed to open it, tumbling onto the snow-covered ground. At that moment, a butterfly landed on her bloodied hand, reminding her of her wish to become a butterfly in the afterlife. Perhaps, the devil had come to claim her for taking a life. Or perhaps, an angel had arrived to guide her to heaven, for she had kept her faith in God.